All right, guys, welcome to Coach's Corner, which is really the best part of this stream. We're bringing Coach's Corner back into different little episodic segments of how to become a better raider. And the first episode is really going to be going through the basics. And there's a lot of basics between learning your class and UIs and macros. But today we're going to be focusing on key binding. Key binding is a really integral part of playing the game. I mean, to start off here, there's nothing wrong with, playing the game how you want to play. There's nothing wrong with it. Do whatever you want, right? This stream is geared towards, raiders in general, and this is applicable to, mythic raiders and heroic raiders, normal raiders, LFR raiders, but we want you to become better players. There's nothing wrong with devouring content at whatever pace you want. If all you want to do is LFRs and normals and dungeons or challenge modes or PvP, all the power to you, right? Who are we to judge, right? Who are we to judge each other on how each other plays? Nobody has the right to judge you on how you play and how you want to play the game. Everyone has different opinions of how, they think the best way to play is, but really, you're paying $15 a month or you're paying with a token. Do whatever you want. It could be pet battles, it could be just questing, devouring all the content that is in the game right now. But me as what I've been doing, for the past 11 years, I want you guys to become better players. And I want you guys to play better, more efficiently, and be better at what you do. So in general, and again, it's a very blanket statement, key binding your abilities is much more effective than clicking your abilities. It will make you a better player. That being said, yes, there's plenty of mythic raiders out there that still keyboard turn and click their abilities. Yeah, there's still plenty, but could they play better? Absolutely. They could totally play better and be better at what they do by keybinding those things. Why crawl when you can walk, and why walk when you can run? Yes, I could, I could RP walk myself from one section to another, but why? Because I've got a broken leg, right? Am I RP walking and I'm role-playing a broken leg? No, right? I'm not that dwarf on Thaddeus. No. But there's two big reasons that key binding is better. The first one is that clicking your abilities, moving your mouse, right? Moving your mouse to wherever your abilities are bound, whether it be your bars over here or over here on the right side, takes longer than simply hitting a button on your keyboard when practiced, right? You can tell me otherwise until you're blue in the face. It is not true, and I can give you a number of reasons why it's much more efficient, right? Like, you've got your mouse here or wherever. You want to hit your divine shield, which is over here, right? You want to make sure you hit the right ability. You want to make sure you have, or if it's a heal, you want to make sure you have the right person targeted, and then hit that ability. Well, what if you miss? Right? What if you miss there? I'm good with my mouse here because I have good hand-eye coordination, but what if you don't have great hand-eye coordination, right? What if you're that 70-year-old player that is a little bit slower, but there's plenty of 70-year-old players playing this game. There was a 70-year-old grandma leading a mythic or heroic raiding guild back in Firelands, right? Everybody can play the game at a high level. So these bars, a lot of these bars, and you can see on my UI, I don't have a lot of my abilities shown. There's 30 plus abilities for every class. If you want to have all of them shown, it takes up a lot of potential real estate, no matter how small you make these bars. These bars, and these ones right here, obviously a bit smaller than my main bars right here, which I've purposely made a little bit larger so I can see which cooldowns and which abilities I have up. If you have a target, or if I'm at a training dummy and I'm looking to tab target through things as well, it means you're losing potential time. I'll give you guys a great example of you're doing a fight like Zul Harak, and you have imps spawning, and you need to interrupt that one imp that is still casting. Well, you can, click your things, you can tab target until you get the right imp between the boss and the big ads and the imps, and then eventually go down to your keybind and click your interrupt. That is a lot slower than just targeting it or hitting your macro that has it targeted, and then or clicking it itself, like clicking the enemy, and then hitting your keybind. That is much more efficient, much quicker than going through those additional steps. What else? So the other one is movement. So part of it is just playing much more quickly. The other part is movement. It is much quicker to run out of fire in whatever way you want to say if you mouse turn than keyboard turn. So here's an example, right? I'm standing on the blue marker right now. I want to move to the purple marker, which is all the way over here. Well, a keyboard turner, and my arrow keys are still bound because nobody really uses arrow keys. My arrow keys are bound. I'm going to turn around and move to the purple marker. There. You know, somebody's keyboard turning when their mouse is still available like this, you know, for them to click their abilities. But more precise movements, you'll be using your strafe keys, or you'll be using mouse turning as well, right? If I want to move to the purple marker, even right here, and move. Just like that. It's much quicker. So you can test this yourselves. If you go to a training dummy, and you have your back to the training dummy, what is the quickest way to turn around? Well, see how long it takes you to turn around and face him? Alternatively, how quick was that, right? Get a stopwatch, measure, really, how long it takes to turn your character around. And there is a plethora of situations where you need to turn around and turn on a dime and react more quickly. Even going through Legion Heroics and Legion Alpha dungeons right now, I don't know how a lot of players will be able to survive a lot of the abilities. Some of the abilities in Arcway, for example, it's just non-stop things landing on top of you. You have to keep running, keep strafing, and it's very difficult for a player that is keyboard turning to effectively be casting any spells. Remember, know your ABCs? Right? Know your ABCs, always be casting. To be casting as well as moving, right? And I'll give you an extreme example a little bit later on. So with those, you know, your movement keys, and yes, right now, like all of these keys, this is arrow keys here, left, right, and those are my arrow keys there, forward and back. We can talk about backpedaling afterwards because I know it's a very controversial topic, especially with PvPers, and PvEers, it's a little bit of a different story. But remember, keybinds don't require you to aim your cursor precisely at that skill in question. If you want to have big bars, so you're, you know, if I want to increase my bars here, and go to action bars, go to bar 4. Bar 4 is the one I should have here, I believe. And then I go button size. I can make them really, really large, right? So me actually hitting them is a little bit easier. But then again, that takes up more potential real estate. And if you can't see, and real estate is basically what is on your screen. Minimalistic UIs, you can see more of the fire, see more of the battle, what is going on around you. So by minimizing all those bars, I have most of my bars hidden right now because they are keybound. I can see more. It's a bit of a sleeker UI. Yes, that's partly personal preference, but it's prettier, right? But it's also very practical. If there's more fire on the ground or there's things I need to see, my UI is not cluttered and covering those things over. You know, I'll give you another example of, if you guys remember a fight like Marigar. So Marigar is, you know, the big bone storm dude in Ice Crown. You know, even the best clickers in the world, right? The ones that are really, really proficient can use their arrow keys to move and go break people out of the little ice prisons. But when he charges, if he's charging towards me right now from green marker, well, how do I get out of here? Like, he's coming towards me, you have a direct charge, and that's an example where you have a lot of abilities coming towards you, right? They're targeted on a player, and it is a charge. Iron Reaver in Hellfire Citadel, exact same thing. He does his blitz towards you. Well, what is more efficient, right? I can go this way. I'm going to go to red or yellow marker. Let's go red and run and go back this way. And he's charged all the way across. I can turn myself around, go back this way, target him, or even if he's already targeted, and keep, you know, DPSing him with my little DPS abilities. Alternatively, it is much quicker if he's charging towards you to simply strafe out this way, right? You've eliminated one full step by turning. That turning adds another half second to your skills or to your movement path. And the more you are moving, the less you are casting. The less you are casting, the less HPS or healing per second you're doing, the less damage you're doing. You always want to minimize your movement and maximize your uptime on your abilities. Key binding and not keyboard turning is one of those key aspects. And the other really important part for keybinding is that when you keybind and when you memorize these keys. You know, my holy shock is E, for example. My judgment is 2. My holy prism is tilde, right? If you know where those keys are, you can see what is going on around you. So if you see there's fire or there's charges or you need to interrupt something, instead of looking down or looking wherever to click your abilities, you are diverting your eyesight from what you're supposed to be watching, right? In the same way we have lots of boss mods that, you know, help us and they're a tool. If you're adjusting your eyesight away from the action, that's where more potential mistakes can happen. Can I show you the hidden bars? Yeah, sure, I can show you the hidden bars. I'll show you my hidden bars. There's 1. There is 2. That one's not working. Bar number 4, bar number 5. Those are my other bars. And bar number 6, yeah. So those are the other ones that I've hidden. You don't really need to see them because those abilities are keybound. So yeah, that's how it would look with my other abilities. Oops, wrong one. Bar number 1. There. So that's how it looks with everything. So yeah, it allows you to not divert your attention. So, and how do you get keybinds? So with Sparty, I won't be able to keybind. Well, let me ask you this, guys. For those of you, can you type without looking at your keyboard? That is the exact same thing. Can you play a musical instrument, a guitar, a flute, whatever, without looking at the notes or looking at the frets on the guitar the entire time? Yeah, it's a lot of practice. Right? A lot of us have been around computers for an extremely long time. We can type proficiently without, you know, looking at our keyboards. Well, some of your parents, right, or your older parents may still be using the index typewriter method of really slow typing. Well, what's faster, you know, using one finger or using multiple fingers when they're all, you know, proficient at that? You type one letter at a time with one hand. Totally, exactly, right? Exactly. So how do you actually keybind, right? And I was looking at my old keybind video, I know you guys, maybe some of you guys are really, you know, you're not really adept at keybinding. Well, let's go through it. So keybinding is really simple. You hit up your escape key, your game menu, and I know this is very basic for a lot of players, but people don't know how to re-keybind their keys. Hit your key bindings. These are your movement keys, your chat keys, your action bar keys. You know, you can see mine, some of them are rebound here. Your multi-action keys, your targeting, like how you want to target things. Now, a lot of these get really advanced. You want to target the closest enemy, the previous enemy, you know, the furthest one, whichever. There's different variations of, you know, how to target things. Your interface panel, which is bags and character stuff, your miscellaneous ones, the stop casting. Again, a lot of these are really advanced ones, not too necessary to go through. You have camera, so you want to zoom in or out. I've always kept mine and mouse wheel in and out. Different targeting markers, you know, assigning, you know, these, you can keybind, so you know you have a skull over an enemy as a tank. A good keybind can make it really easy, right? Instead of, you know, here's an example. I've got a training dummy. This is the enemy we want to kill. Well, I'm going to click him, go to my raid control panel, and we're going to put a marker on him, right? Well, that's more, you know, raid markers, but I'm going to put a marker on him. Well, much more efficient to just have that ability bound to one of your main keys. This is what we're attacking. You know, as a tank, you direct your DPS on what to attack. Makes it much easier. Good. So where do you keybind your things? So I'll show you guys quickly. There is, I'm going to bring up this keyboard here. Right there. So you can see there on the very top, so you can't see my mouse because it's hiding, the WASD. So we'll start with the blue colors first. With the blue colors, those are your movement keys. Now, one of the first things you should do, and I know some MMOs do this really well, is rebind your keyboard turn keys. And this is always the best starting point. Okay, again, we'll talk about different people with disabilities and, you know, one-handed gamers and that kind of stuff later. But in general, start off with rebinding your strafe. Your Q and E are bound to strafe normally. Your D and A are bound to keyboard turning like this. Okay, that is your main home position. You'll get used to it. You'll see a lot of friends, gamers, whatever. As soon as they put their hands on the keyboard, you know where your hands go? To WASD, right? I get home from work and my left hand goes directly to WASD because that's what you've been practiced to do. That makes it much easier. So WASD is your movement keys. These are your clear movement keys. So you're going to rebind. So under key bindings, you would go to movement keys, and right now we have forward, back, turn left and right. So initially, these are bound as A and D, and these were bound here as Q and E. You want to rebind your strafe left to A and your strafe right to D. That is the big first step. And this way, you are now moving. Well, Sparty, what if I want to turn around? Guess what? We're now going to start mouse turning. Right? You start mouse turning like this, much quicker. And yes, maybe you don't have a strong wrist, or you know, you're new to using a mouse, or different sensitivities or whatever, but in general, it is much quicker to turn yourself, right? 360, 180, whatever, than to turn around like this. Okay, much quicker. Now, the green keys, these are your prime real estate. So we talk about real estate on your UI. Your green keys, these are the ones where you really want to bind your most important abilities. So if your left hand is on WASD right now, and the rest of your, you know, the rest of those keys around there, those are your prime keybind keys, which means the abilities that you're using most often. Like what? You know, so maybe some viewers can help out here. As a Death Knight, what abilities are you hitting most often? As a warrior, as a Death Knight, or sorry, as a druid, as a rogue, what are you using to stab? Right? Stab, backstab, whatever rogues do. As a healer, I'm using Holy Shock, right? Well, that's bound to E. That is one of my most important abilities, my E key, which requires very little movement away from the home keys, which are WASD. My Q key, right? Well, right now I'm running Selfless Healer as a spec. Light of Dawn. Right, again, very close. 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, stuns, judgments, whatever you want to do. But those are your prime keys. So E, R, and yeah, R can be reply default. I would suggest rebinding it so you don't accidentally hit R while you are trying to kill a boss or trying to DPS or heal, because suddenly you hit R and you're hitting all your other abilities and you're just typing a big long message to the last person you talk to, and your character hasn't been doing anything for the last 20 seconds. And you don't realize until you die. It has happened to me, trust me. It is one of those new mistakes that I have learned from plenty of times. So a lot of my abilities are around those WASD keys. Things like C normally brings up your character pane, right? Well, I rebound that to Control C. So this time I'm not accidentally hitting my C's, and I can use it for a more important ability. I use my dagger to stab. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. All right. And then the keys that are in the yellow section, those are further and further away. So use those for cooldowns or abilities that you're not using that often. So for example, my number 5 key, and that again is in the yellow section, that is my Denounce. Very rarely am I using my Denounce. Right? I'm using it on a number of different bosses when I need to DPS, and yeah, healers do need DPS as well. But not as often as Holy Shock, for example, or Judging, or whatever is part of my main rotation. So bind your most important keys to the green abilities around there. And the other abilities are the next ones. The pinks are modifiers. So you have all of these abilities, but Sparty, how am I going to fit 30 abilities on these few green keys that I want to use? I don't want to use Z. It's Z, not Z. Or X or C or whatever. I want to use, 1, 2, 3, 4 or Q and E and that kind of stuff and bind them. Okay, well, you can use modifiers. So you can use modifiers like Shift and Control and Alt. And those are really good ones for using a different ability. So here's an example. My Hands of Sacrifice, my Purity, my Blessing of Protection, I still call Blessing of Protection, those kinds of things are all bound to Shift modifiers. So if I were to cast Blessing of Protection on myself here, it would be a Shift B. Or Shift F would be Hand of Sacrifice, not that I can sacrifice anybody here. Or Shift G would be Purity, or it would be Hand of Freedom, depending on which one I'm spec'd into. Right, so that's why modifiers are really good, and I don't have to extend my hand all the way across my keyboard. So where a lot of people that are key binding go really wrong is trying to bind really important abilities, maybe personal cooldowns, maybe interrupts, to something like 9 or 0. So try stretching your hand from A over to 0 and trying to hit that ability. I mean, unless you have giant man fingers like I do, maybe you have little tiny sausage fingers, then you won't be able to stretch that way. But still, it's uncomfortable. It's not efficient. So when you bind your abilities, try to bind them on from tilde, which is the top left corner of the keyboard there, to 5. Those are, again, your main ones. But use those modifiers. Control, Shift, Alt, and for a Shift one, you could use your pinky, right, your left pinky or your left ring finger to use Shift. For Control, you would use your pinky. For Alt, you would use your thumb. So it would be Alt D or Alt W. Alt W is my wings. I use personal cooldowns as well, so Shift D is my divine protection, my personal cooldown. Now, we can talk about razor, mice, and that kind of stuff later on, but this is, again, just for keybinds themselves. This is one of the reasons that something like the Razor Nog is a godsend for keybinding. Yes and no. I have a Razor Noggin. I have one more for comfort. I use some of the keys on it, but I find a lot more efficiency out of just straight using the keybinds. And there's technical reasons why keyboards are actually much faster than your average mouse. It's not just, some random guild leader guy, streamer saying, it's faster, right? What's faster? Me hitting E like this or me clicking E? Well, the technical reason is that it's faster to actually hit it with a key press. And I can go into the technical jargon itself as well. But basically, good mechanical PS2 keyboards, whatever, send interrupts directly to the CPU. The keystrokes are read instantly, like instantly. Not, super instant, but instantly. Whereas USB devices are polled. So what an interrupt signal is, so when it says interrupts, not interrupts like, you're interrupting a spellcast, but an interrupt signal sends directly to the CPU and says that the event needs an immediate action right away. I need you to hit that key thing, that keybind, which means your CPU stops what it's doing and processes that keystroke right away. Whereas polling means every whatever milliseconds, it's constantly checking for an update if you've pressed that key or that click. So again, there's technical background to it as to why keystrokes are actually quicker than clicking. Why not bind F1 to F4? You totally can, and that's just in general. So in the top section, you can see. So let me pull it up here. So your F keys are not bound there. I use those. I use my F2 Devotion Aura. I use my F4 as my Oops, which one is it? Oh, I'm at the wrong spec here. That's why. I use my where's my heal spec? There. It's not ready yet. But F4 is my ring. I totally use those. Those are abilities that I will not use often, and I find those the same as the yellow keys. And you can totally use them. Absolutely. The one thing I suggest you don't bind is Alt F4. Please don't bind Alt F4, guys. Yeah, don't, because Alt F4 obviously closes down your games. Excessive mouse buttons are a crutch. I mean, that's an opinion. I don't use all my mouse buttons, right, on my Razor Nog. I use some of them for comfort, some of them for ease, but it comes down to how you want to play. And of course, Tab is used for changing targets, and Spacebar is for jumping, where on some abilities or some boss fights or some puzzles, you actually do need to jump. Back in my day, jumping was bad, because jumping would reset your swing timer. These days, everybody is friggin' jumping. I don't know why. I hate it. I hate everybody jumping around in raids. Anyway, so that is quick little gist of key bindings and where to key bind your keys. So where do you start? Where do you start by key binding? Like I do implore you guys, those of you that are clickers, those of you that are keyboard turners, whatever, I do implore you to give it a shot. But how do you give it a shot? Well, I'll explain that to you. The first thing is, don't do it all at once. And this is the big issue that a lot of people make, is that it's really overwhelming. If I were to ask you right now to start using keybinds for everything, it's extremely overwhelming. So you have to take practice. You don't just start typing right away and start playing music on guitar right away. It's small stages, small steps, small progression steps. The first thing to do when you are looking to keybind your abilities now is unbind those Q and E, which are your keyboard, which are strafe, right, and move them to WASD. So you are strafing left and right. That is the first thing to do. Spend a day, keep clicking your abilities, do whatever you want, but this will get you used to turning your mouse when you want to change direction. That is the first small step. The next one would be to build, so step 2, bind your most important abilities to those green buttons, the green buttons that are at the top there, right? The 1, 2, 3, 4. So your Holy Shocks, your Judgment, if you're a Ret Paladin, your Crusader Strike, your Final Verdict, your Divine Storm, all that stuff. That's where you want to start binding those keys next. Don't worry about your cooldowns. Cooldowns come last. Your Divine Shield, your Wings, all that stuff, that can come at the very, very end. But you keep working your way out from that WASD home position. Right, we talk about home row back in your computer classes or whatever, but you want to start off small. Start off with your strafe keys, right? Work to your E's and your Q's, right? And your G's eventually, and your 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, right? There's my beacon. It's a 1. It depends on your class, but generally try to keep the same keybinds. If you're playing lots of alts, then try to keep your keybinds the same. When I play my Warlock or when I play my Ret, I try to keep the keybinds very, very, very similar. And I know guys like below do the exact same thing. I hit your pumpers, and your pumpers are basically where you are building up a resource, and your dumpers or your spenders are where you're spending those resources, like Chaos Bolts, right? Keep them the same. How do you know when a spell is not on cooldown, though? What do you mean by that, Achilles? How do you know when a spell is not on cooldown? You mean, how do I know? Like, if it's available? Well, you'll learn through time. So here's an example. My Holy Shock, right, it has a 4.5 second or 5 second cooldown right now based off my haste. If it's not on cooldown, right, it's available to be used, it'll be like this, right, like it's a solid color. If it is off cooldown, then I can see a number here. And you'll learn through peripheral vision, right? Like I'm looking over here right now, I can see that this was on cooldown because it's darker. And that's part of the reason that I made my main bars here. You can use weak auras as well. I've used, a different action bar because I had issues with those weak auras, just updating quick enough. But I can see through peripheral vision that the cool abilities there. Alternatively, you can make weak auras, that show right next to your character, Holy Shock able to be used, or right here. We'll talk about weak auras in a future episode, but right, it shows you there. Wings as well. Well, I've got a big weak aura on the left side of my screen that says how long my wings are going, 25 more seconds, 24, whatever, and it shows you later on. In addition, if I get into combat here, I'll show you another example. So I'm in combat right now. On the left side of my screen, here's another ability, right? Instead of actually going to my thing here and right-clicking my Intuition's Gift, I'm going to hit F3. Oops, one sec here. There. F3, and my Intuition's Gift is up right now. Well, what happens when it's off cooldown? Oh, I think I messed that up. But basically what happens is there. It shows me that it's still on cooldown for 2 more minutes. When I'm in, and it only shows up when I'm in combat. But again, that is a weak aura thing. My hidden bars? Well, my hidden bars don't actually show active cooldowns. So something like Righteous Fury or Beacon, if I were to remove my Beacon right now, and that's, again, not on my bars, there's a quick little weak aura that says, hey, for the next 2-3 seconds, you can't use your Beacon again. But I would not show... Like, I would not hide abilities that do have a cooldown, if you understand what I mean. So things like Holy Radiance, right, which is my G key, not that I use Holy Radiance much anyway, that doesn't have a cooldown, so I'm not showing it. Flash of Light does not have a cooldown, or Holy Light does not have a cooldown. Lay Hands does have a cooldown, but you're only using it once per fight anyway, and my Lay Hands is a little bit different. So I use a combination of on-click abilities as well as keybinds and macros. Realize on my hidden bars, though, yeah, but we also have weak auras for tracking all that stuff as well. I mean, that's a good point. So when you have things that have a longer cooldown, maybe a stun, something that you need to do often enough, or your speed burst or whatever, then yeah, you want to be tracking those cooldowns, make sure they are up when you need them, so you're not using them, at a really bad point. Again, I think we'll cover up in the future. Somebody had another question here. Is there a way I can make it less awkward when pressing Shift 1 to 5? The best way is, again, I think using your pinky finger on Shift, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I were to, Shift 2, I guess that's, Shift 2 is actually my mount-up key, right? Shift 2, 3, 4. The more you sort of put your fingers together on one side, the more awkward it is. So, Sildar says, it's surprising how transferable keybinds are across classes, like every class is a speed up or gap closer to put the speed up on the same keybind. Yeah, all my movement increases are the exact same thing. They're Alt 3. Right? Alt 3 is my speed of light. In the same way, when I'm playing my Warlock, my Burning Rush is Alt 3. So I know if I want a speed burst, I'm going to hit this exact same keys. So it doesn't change. Because again, it's a much higher learning curve when you have to change your keybinds around. Hopefully everyone's following so far. So you start off again. So to quick recap, if you're starting off key binding, you do movement keys first, which is your WASD, right? Strafing. So if I want to turn to the other direction, you are forced to mouse turn, right? Mouse look. So basically mouse look is left hand. I'm still facing the purple marker, but left finger on, or left index finger on, yeah, your right hand index finger on the left button, and you can look around, right, which is important when you're looking around to see what's happening, and right click to actually turn, which is much quicker. Could I explain what cooldowns are? Yeah, cooldowns are basically abilities that cannot be consecutively pressed. So an ability without a cooldown is Flash of Light, like this. I'm hitting Flash of Light all day long, right? I can hit it as much time as I want, besides the global cooldown, which means you can't be like spamming instant spells forever. So some instant spells, for instance, like Holy Shock, right? This does have a cooldown, as you can see here on the left side. So I have to wait a few more seconds before it's actually up again. Then I'll hit it again. And I have to wait, 5 more seconds until it's actually up again. Those are cooldowns. Avenging Wrath is a healing cooldown. So that'll, 2.5 or 2 minutes is how long it takes for it to come back up. Hopefully that explains it, Mr. Prouty. Yeah, so one thing you want to probably disable is the auto adjust. So like right now I can change my camera however I want, and it will not go back to this auto adjust, following me around. Okay. And then where else are we going to talk about? Okay. So I can go through more of my personal binds here. So some of you run with a Razor Naga. For instance, my Divine Shield is bound to 8. If I want to bubble, I'm not going to stretch my hand all the way across to hit 8. I use my Razor Naga for that, right? I'm just going to hit my bubble like this, and I'm running around, all safe. In the same sense, if I want to interrupt, both my 9 and 12 on the Razor Naga are my interrupt keys. Are my interrupt keys. So if I want to interrupt this guy, right, I'm hitting, and there's my interrupt, right, punching him in the face. So you can use a Razor Naga as well to eliminate a lot of those keybinds. And again, it is a learned skill. It takes time to start binding your thumb or your abilities on the side of your mouse or whatever you're running to get those keybinds down, rather than, again, clicking your abilities, right? This, and then this, and then this. Guess what? Now I have to heal midgets. Okay, I'm going to target midgets, and I'm going to go heal her as well. So again, much more efficient to do mouse over macros, which we'll cover in next episode, or be just hitting your straight up keybinds. Do you care if your raiders follow that keybind setup? No, I don't. No, again, I don't, right? I don't care. Whatever is efficient. There are some things that, really should be keybound, right? So if I ask you guys here in chat, what is your health tonic bound to? Right? What is your health tonic bound to? Well, mine's Alt-1. That is my oh shit button. Right here. Again, health tonic, not health stones. You guys don't use health stones ever, right? Like you never use health stones. Why? Because health stones restore less HP than health tonics. So yours is bound to G, yours is tilde, F, Shift C, good, Shift R, good, Shift Q, 11, I guess you're using your Naga, okay, Shift T, Alt 4, Control Wheel down. Again, those are all really good keybinds, right? Some of you, again, are using this, Razor Naga thing, and some of you guys are just hitting whatever keybinds work. Yeah, tilde the button next to 1. So that is another really important thing you need to have keybound. Instead of like, oh shit, I'm dying in fire, my HP is dropping low, let me go panic for my, for my healing tonic, or even worse yet, go through your bag full of left sharks and then find which one's your potion, and then you accidentally hit your Draining Strength potion instead of your health tonic, and guess what, you have more strength, but then you die. So again, those keybinds are really, really important. Tampa says, also, for instance, when doing keybinds, try to have them in the same order in your action bars as the corresponding keys on your keyboard. F1 to F5 for cooldowns, I have them in the same order on the screen. Yeah, totally. So I guess what he's advocating is don't have like a 1 here and then a 3 here and a 4 here. Mine are a little bit mixed up based off my playstyle for Holy Paladins and just the movement I've been doing. You could have your keys bound and go 1, 2, 3, 4. When I DPS on my Warlock, it's very similar. I'm going to go 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. Go through all the dots and then do the curses or whatever. And it's a really, really simple way to do it, right? And that way you're still keeping your keys, or your hand, in your WASD keys. All right. And now, sorry, some players now, players with disabilities, and this is again geared towards the average player, the average Joe player, which is me and you and the rest of us, monkeys. Now, some players have disabilities or they are unable to do this, so they click their abilities because they physically cannot. Okay, they physically cannot hit all their keys, whether they're using a Razer Naga or they're using their keyboard. They physically cannot. I'll give you 2 examples. I've got a raider back in Serpentine Cavern. We're doing Lurker Below. Lurker Below is a big fish boss. Basically, I have to fish him up. And I've got a little gnome tank named Shelby. Shelby's tanking. He's tanking the boss. And suddenly, Shelby just stops. He just has auto attack going. He's not doing any of his special moves. And there's a big attack coming, and we're like, Shelby, what's going on? Shelby, we're trying to communicate to him over Ventrilo at the time. And Shelby can't hear me. He's just auto attacking like this. And so eventually, he sort of, we hear him on Ventrilo struggling, guys, I fell off my chair, and I think I broke my arm. And everybody's like, God, Shelby, are you okay? I mean, it turns out he must have, leaned over and broken his chair and took falling damage, and then broke his arm. So, everybody's asking, are you okay? And I'm like, can you still tank, right? I want to know if this guy can still tank. Well, then he would have to modify his setup, right? Because now he can only really play with one arm. I had another tank by the name of Ethica back in Wrath of the Lich King. This guy, great tank, he had a motorcycle accident where a car hit him and he flew through a windshield, nearly through the second windshield, lots of nerve damage in his arm. So he was unable to actually, I think it was his left arm, he had very little feeling, lots of nerve damage, where he was not actually able to use his left hand. So they left his right hand to, move around, and it's tough to do, right? You could use, you can click things, you can use abilities. I mean, he could be a clicker, he could use his Razer Naga to click the abilities, right? Whatever you want to do, right? There's my denounce. But what about for movement? Well, then he'd have to move like this. So there are lots of alternatives for those of you people that cannot physically do those things. One example is the the Razer, what is it? This thing right here. So this bad boy, for those of you that can use your left hand, helps a lot of those things out, where you can keybind those things more efficiently, move around, target things. Again, that can help if you can't use your right hand, for example. Don't use trackballs. For the love of God, do not use trackballs. Trackballs is what you use in the 90s in school. You don't use it for playing video games to get better. So Pyrobun here, great example. He says he has a broken collarbone and play with some alternative keybinds. Sometimes you have to adapt. It is totally fine to be, a one-armed raider. You guys know No Hands Ken. The guy has no hands. He can play Warcraft. He uses a friggin' tube in his mouth, right? He's a quadriplegic that cannot use any of his limbs, but he's able to play a friggin' game like this. I bet we could take him to a raid, and I bet he would stay out of the fire. Totally would. Right? You use that for League? Yeah, absolutely. Maybe you're a Swifty and you're missing a pinky, right? Well, maybe then you'll use a different keybind. My pinky, I've got a tendon ripped in my hand right here. I can't straighten my finger out. I mean, I can, but it hurts. So I use a modification of different mice and different keybinds to make sure I can physically do these things. So there, I'm with you guys, right? Guild leader sits in a wheelchair, whatever, and he's doing a hardcore raiding. It's all possible. I don't want to hear any of this hey, I'm disabled, I'll never be a hardcore raider. Bull effing shit. Every one of you goddamn jackalopes can be a hardcore raider. Just put in the effort. And it starts here. It starts with key binding. It starts in putting in the effort. And I guarantee you could be a mythic raider. Mythic raiders, again, a lot of them are still clicking, right? They're still keyboard turning like this, and they're targeting, this guy, and they're healing them, whatever. But you can make yourself a better player. I don't care if you do dungeons. Listen, this is applicable to friggin' questing. You will do more damage out there in the world questing for your stupid quests here. I did archaeology. For these, these I've been doing recently, right? Defeat all these rare creatures. If all you do is Tanan Jungle, I guarantee you will do more damage. You will take less damage if you keybind your keys. And again, it is a practice skill. It takes time to learn these. You will not get better overnight. It takes time. I redid my entire UI halfway through, Wrath of the Lich King and then Mists of Pandaria. I redid everything, and it takes time to learn. I played with Eternal Flame most of this expansion, and then near the end of this expansion, I switched to Selfless Healer. It took me roughly a week to get used to it. And I've been playing this game for 11 friggin' years. It takes a long time sometimes because it's a different play style. It's just a different logic behind what you're doing. So, you guys can do it. You guys can absolutely do it. There's been blind players, deaf players, whatever. You can absolutely become better players. And part of it starts here in Keybinds. And again, try not to click your abilities. And I guarantee, I implore you guys to try. For those of you that are, keyboard turning, window licking clickers, right? And I say that very jokingly and lovingly. I want you guys to try. Start off by rebinding your arrow keys, right? Or your A and D key to from keyboard turning to strafing, so you get used to movement, and from then on start with abilities. Go to LFR, right? I mean, LFR is LFR. You've got a lot of leeway in terms of performing in all kinds of different aspects, but start there. Start doing an Alterac Valley, or start doing some battlegrounds where you're there to practice, right? You can go to a training dummy here and practice your rotation. So you've got your movement keys down, right? You started off with your WASD. You're able to move now more efficiently, much more quickly. Great. Then you start off with just practicing your rotation. And I shit you not, a lot of top-end players will start off training dummy. You're going to practice rotation. Make sure the muscle memory is there. If you have a musical instrument, how do you know a C chord from a D chord, right? Well, it's practice. An E chord, like an E major from an E minor, or an A chord. Like I play guitar, so I know. Again, it's through practice, trial and error, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. I've made plenty of mistakes playing this damn game, right? I've been playing for how long? How many play days? 914 days on this character. I've played since day one beta. I've got all the statues, all the fun stuff from Blizzard to prove it. Right? I've got 13... How long have I been playing now? 11 years? This game's been out for too long. I've been playing this game for too long, and I've got plenty of experiences of failure. Don't be afraid to fail. You should not be afraid to try, though. Like, you have to try. If you fail, you fail. Big deal. Everybody fails. Everybody friggin' fails. So try it. Question from Locks here. Any suggestions on how to increase my reaction time with a cognitive disability? I know my keybinds, but in fights like Iskar, I struggle to be fast on wins and throw the orb. A lot of that is practice. You have to remember that the average human, the average reaction time is not 200 milliseconds. It is slow, and some players are slower than others. Guess what? The older you get, I'm 30 now, my reaction times have slowed. From when I was 20, playing Quake 3 friggin' Arena, blowing up noobs with my goddamn rocket launcher, to now, I can't play FPS as a game. Part of it's I'm out of practice, but my reaction times are nowhere close to where they were when I was a young, rock star hockey playing lifeguard, right? Those were my glory days. Now I'm here to teach, right, and still sort of play. So suggestions, again, it's practice. It's practice, and don't put that much pressure on yourself. Right? Even players at my level of playing here, the mythic level guilds, are still sometimes slow to react. And they'll make mistakes. I'll make those mistakes too. Right? I've done the fight, I don't know how many times. I've killed Iskar over 100 times at least. At the very, very least, on multiple characters. And yeah, I've made mistakes still throwing the eye sometimes. Right? The best way to sort of logically figure it out, and this is something that I stress really often in my streams, is always assume the worst, like all the abilities are going to land on you. Murphy's Law, Lady Luck just gave you the finger. Every possible worst thing, every debuff from every boss is going to land on you. Great example is, and when I watch Zeros to Heroes do this fight, this boss right here, Manaroth. He's got a Fell Seeker. Where's his Fell Seeker? Fell Seeker targets a ranged or healer. Guess what? Tonight's not your night. Every single Fell Seeker is going to land on you tonight. Plan ahead. What is your plan right now? If the boss is at blue and Fell Seeker is about to happen, what is your plan for when Fell Seeker is about to land? Where are you going to go? Think ahead, sort of like chess, right? You're about to get a gaze right now. Well, for gazes, where should you be standing in melee range? Right? Gaze is about to happen. You've got your boss mod. So, Again, it takes time. It's a learned skill. These are learned skills for rating. Hi, I'm a player who can just see 8.2%, and everything is possible if you know how to help yourself and if you have guild red members that are able to help you where you need them. I did 13 out of 13 Mythic, and it was fun. Yeah, it was hard, but that showed me that I can do whatever I want. Exactly! Thargaz, all the power to you! Thargaz, you know what? I got something for you. Thargaz, this is just for you, buddy. Thanks for sharing your awesome story. That's it, right? Like, again, this keybindings is where it starts. Start keybinding your abilities. Start from somewhere, and I can give you guys another really great example of why keybinding is quicker than clicking. And this is a bit of an extreme example. Let me pull this up for you guys. This is another Twitch streamer, and again, this is a quick little example. This is a Twitch streamer by the name of Rudism. Zaram actually linked me his stream. Let me see if I can pull it up for you guys. So this is a dude that is using his feet. He's using, I don't know why the giveaway populates like that, but he's using his feet to control. He's got a Dance Dance Revolution pad there, and he's using his keys, or his feet to control that character. He's leveling all the way to 100 without using his hands. So he's keybound that DDR pad, but this is very similar to both keybinding and clicking. It shows you how slow clicking those abilities is and moving, and it shows you the power of keybinding something, right? He's macroed or keybound all those things. I don't know where he is at right now, but this guy's an awesome dude. I watched him play for a while, and it was really entertaining. So yeah, he's leveling to 100, and yes, work out so hard to level, but he's actually having a good time, and it's a great stream. That's a lot of giveaways, thanks. So yeah, and yeah, it was a really cool thing to watch. Again, anything possible. Just playing with your feet. You have no arms, guess what? You're playing with your feet now. DDR pads. There's nothing wrong with playing like that. Who are we to judge, right? Like, he's a totally normal guy, I'm sure. So there's that. And the other sort of big thing here, and I know I'm gonna stop here after this little topic, and I'll answer everybody's questions here. If you guys have questions, please just ask, have them ready. Backpedaling. Okay, backpedaling is basically your S key, right? It's bound to your S key like this. And backpedaling, and this is something that I've been stressing for the longest time, you never, ever, ever backpedal out of abilities. I'll give you an example here. Here, let me spec Light's Hammer really quick. And let's say there's a big fire right here, okay? Right on me, again, worst abilities ever, or abilities always landing on me, fire. Do not ever backpedal out of abilities. Look how much slower this moonwalk backpedal is than simply running, right? Guess what? Light's Hammer landed on me. Okay, let's strafe out. Much quicker than simply backpedaling out. And now there are some instances in PvE where you may want to backpedal, especially if you're tanking, repositioning a boss, whatever. There are some instances where it's okay. In general, you do not want to backpedal. Right? There are some of your abilities that are frontal abilities. Another great example is Legion, Holy Paladins. We have, again, the frontal cone Light of Dawn, right? A big flashlight in front of us. This Light of Dawn's a little bit different. It's a big AoE. So where you're facing matters, right? If I want to Light of Dawn and I wanted to run this way away from something, and then I need to heal my raid, which is still standing over here. Right? There's some extreme examples. In PvP, obviously, in general, you don't want to be backpedaling because people run right around you and they just stab you in the back. And you also want to keep moving the entire time. So, I don't even have backpedal keybound, and that's totally fine, right? You don't have to have backpedal keybound. If you want to backpedal, you'll use your arrow key. The other big thing, if you have your hands on your keyboard, so let's say you're the average person, and you have your right hand on your keyboard, so your right hand on your mouse and your left hand on your keyboard, at no point do you want to take your hand off your mouse here, right, to hit other abilities. You don't want to do this. Please, for the love of God, do not do this. Do not. Just know it. You want to use your numpad, right, for arrow turning or whatever, hitting, just don't. Again, much more effective, much quicker to be using your mouse. That's what it's there for. Okay? I've taken downtime to try it on keybinding. I've taken about 1.5 months of trying to learn. I just can't do it, but at least I know that I tried and I'm playing at the highest level I can. Well, did you overwhelm yourself? That's a question from Nimoy. Did you overwhelm yourself by keybinding too much? Right? You know, and I hate to use this example, but if you're like an 85-year-old grandmother, right, that learning curve is a little bit different, right? It's much more difficult to teach, you know, that old dog new tricks, but it's not impossible, right? Again, in your situation, Nimoy, I would say start off easy. Start off just this, right? Just movement. WASD. Movement however you want. Mouse turning. Guess what? If you don't have able to hit all your abilities at once, that's fine. You're going to suffer. Your DPS is going to suffer a lot. Who cares? Give it time. Then start key binding 1 or 2 abilities at a time. If you're a DPS player, let me switch to my red spec here. Let's give you guys a bit of a DPS example and why this is important to be strafing. This is applicable both to PvE as well as PvP. So I've got this Raider's training dummy right now, and, you know, for example, Q is my Crusader Strike, 2 is my Judgment, Crusader Strike, 1 is my Exorcism, you know, F is my Final Verdict. So they're all keys roughly close to WASD, right? Well, what happens if I need to, like, there's a big fire that spawned right here. Big fire just landed on me, I have to move out of it. Well, you want to keep DPSing, right? Because that's what DPS do. The last thing you want to do is run out this way, and then run back like this. I know I slightly exaggerated it, but you don't want to be keyboard turning out of abilities and going back this way. Well, then you've overshot it and gone back around. It's much more efficient to be dancing around that enemy like friggin' Muhammad Ali, right? You want to be strafing around and doing circles, literal circles around your enemy, right? Another great example is, what if you have to move and heal someone at the exact same time? What is your plan? So if, let's say you're a healer, right? I want to heal myself, or I want to heal a person, or a tank, or blow a cooldown, or change targets while using a personal cooldown and moving. Well, if you want to run this way and put my personal cooldown and then heal someone, it's just not going to happen. Whereas if I'm strafing, I can hit my keybind, right? My keybinds for my personal cooldowns, and then keep healing the entire time. So again, you can do more things at once, but again, it takes time. Give it time. Yeah, I mean, don't limit yourself. Razor Naga helps a lot. Again, I have a Razor Naga. I use it mostly for comfort, few abilities. You guys do not need, and this is another quick aside, you don't need gamer gear. Gamer gear is... Don't even get me started on gamer gear. Find something that's comfortable for you, something reliable within your price range. You don't need 2017 Naga that, you know, comes with 2 extra balls. You don't need it, right? This gamer gear will not make you a better player. A lot of these things are for comfort. Part of them, in a technical standpoint, they're even more efficient, right? Like mechanical keyboards, depending on how much you're hitting your buttons or how far you're hitting your buttons. That's where it's a little bit more effective. But in general, you don't need gamer gear to be a good gamer. You don't have to, I mean, unless you want to burn money, which, whatever. So Nimoy says, I want small steps. It also might be that I have a bigger keyboard and I have smaller hands. Well, that's another big thing, right? Find a keyboard that fits for you. I had this old Logitech G15, you know, the big, massive behemoths, and that was okay, but I never used my G keys. It was just this big, massive tank on my desk. Now I've got a mechanical keyboard. It's a Logitech G710, and I like that a lot more. Again, it's all personal preference, right? You want different keyboard switches. It's comfort. What works best for you? Yeah, Naga Chin says is quality of life. Use modifiers like alt control and so on. Again, you can be using, you know, 5 keys or 6 keys and just use modifiers for them. So, you know, Q, E, whatever, you know, using these abilities. Like another good example is, you know, my wings are the same between both Holy and Red Spec, which is Alt W. My Hand of Sacrifice, my Hand of Protection, my Hand of Freedom, they're all the same on both specs, so I don't have to change that at all, right? Why would I want to learn a whole new different keybind for a whole different spec? It's silly. So try to keep it the same wherever you can. So I use that example, perfect. So yes, again, key binding keys, hitting your keys with your keystrokes, right, is much more effective than just clicking. But if, look, guys, if that's the way you want to play, if that is the way you want to play, who am I to judge? I don't give a shit, right? I don't care. I do want you to become a better player. I do want you guys to try. At least try, go through small steps, and come back to me and say, hey, Sparty, you know what? I watched your Coach's Corner video on YouTube, or I was here on Twitch, and I tried it. And it took a little while, but it worked. Right? So now, Nimoy, maybe your hands are really small, you've got tiny little sausage fingers, right? Maybe you're a gnome in real life or a hobbit, and you've got this massive keyboard. Well, there are other keyboards that are much smaller, like really, really tiny ones. Mine's a pretty big keyboard because I've got, big man fingers. So try a smaller keyboard. I use a standard keyboard and mouse for many years, says Alora, until you're convinced you get a G400 Logitech mouse. Sears is right. Well, there we go. And so there's another really popular kind of keybind, and I'll cover this now that you're here. Sure, that you've brought it up. Thanks, jerk. So again, we've touched on WASD as one of the most comfortable one, or the most prominent sort of keybinds. Not a lot of other players, but some other players will also use ESDF. Okay, now put your hands on WASD. That's where most players will play, whether it be FPSs or MOs, whatever. If you shift slightly to the right and go ESDF, it feels very foreign to me, super, super foreign. However, that frees up a lot of other keys around you. So now my W, my Q, my A, my Z, all those other keys are now free for potential key binding. That is an alternate way of playing. I think it's so foreign that it's such a weird concept to me, but it is very effective, and a lot of other players will do that exact same thing. So, it might make modifiers different, but try something new. Try something different, and I guarantee key binding your abilities will make you a better player. Again, it comes down to those numbers. If I have fire landing on me right here, and I shift out of it really quickly, and I'm able to DPS, the quicker you move out of the fire, the more time you have to DPS. The more time you spend moving, right? Another extreme example is moving out, same distance, or roughly... There, it's a better marker there. Right, roughly equidistant points. Right, you guys see that? It takes much more time, and the more I'm moving, the less I'm DPSing, the less I'm casting. In addition, you're taking more damage the longer you're in that fire. In other examples, a great mechanic is Defile, Wrath of the Lich King. That big heroic mechanic. The longer you were standing in that fire, the big Defile, big black pool, the bigger it would get. So you could not spend more than a second in that Defile. Otherwise, it would keep growing and growing and growing, encompass the entire platform, and you would die because somebody was too slow to move. And that's where it was really, really critical to move. All right. What about left-handed people? I'm not left-handed, but we might have some small left-hand lurkers. Yeah, with left-handed people, I've had left-handed players in my guild as well, and they'll use, a left-handed mouse, or they'll play a little bit differently. So an example of a left-handed player, so you use your left hand, if you want to play like this, on your mouse, and your right hand would then be bound or be using the potential numpad keys. So on the far right there, you have your numpad keys, right? Right now mine are bound to, turning, arrow keys, whatever. You can use that numpad as well, right? It's uncomfortable for you to take your left hand if you're using a mouse, and then your right hand on WASD and all those things, like your hands are too close. This is not how you play. This is how a T-Rex plays. Take your hand off to the far right side and use your numpad. So now your numpad is your action bar, and you can use those exact same things, those modifiers. Right? You can use those same modifiers. That guy, Ethica, that I told you guys about earlier, right? The one that had the nearly severed arm, lots of nerve damage. He actually had to use a pedal, right? He used a pedal as a modifier. He used his foot. So you could only play with one hand, but he used a pedal for Alt and Shift and Spacebar or whatever. So, and yeah, some people are left-handed, but they play like right-handed players do. So, yeah, like Gemgor here, like Herbalo's brother. Exactly. All right. So that sort of winds us down to the keybind section. Does anybody else have any any questions about keybinding? Any other quick little stories to share? Let me know. But again, we'll wind down with keybinding much more effective. It's better in terms of hitting your abilities on time, right? Instead of skill shotting, which means I want to hit my divine protection right now. Okay, there. Or I want to hit my judgment right now. Well, you hit the wrong ability. You now hit cleanse. Right, or hit my wings instead of by accident. Much more potential for making a mistake in terms of a move. Whereas with key binding, right, I know what those keys are bound with, again, through practice. Initially, if you try to overwhelm yourself, it's going to be really, really bad, a really bad show where you'll be doing so poorly that you'll be overwhelmed. And I don't want you guys getting discouraged by trying different keybinds. What keys are used to strafe with? A and D. Those are the most common keys to strafe with Light Thunder. A and D, right there. Like that. There. So A and D are the most common ones. So yeah, back to what I was saying. With your keybinds, again, bind them in a good spot. So looking at our keyboard on the screen there, WASD are your movements. Your prime real estate keys, your most commonly used keys, are the green ones in general. And then the yellow keys are less often used keys, or the F keys. Those are also used for cooldowns or things you may not use as often. And then your purple keys, those are your modifiers. So you have, all these abilities in your spell book, all these abilities, and you may have to use most of them in a raid, right? I may need to taunt and interrupt and lay hands in judgment and use the Hand of Sacrifice, Hand of Protection and Freedom, and Hammer of Wrath here, and I might need to use my Hammer of Righteous for some reason. I need to heal somebody because I'm Selfless Healer and stun something. At the same time, you're using your main DPS abilities. That's a lot of potential things to keybind. So you use modifiers, right? Things that you won't use as often. So instead of, my F key being Hand of Sacrifice, because I'm not using Hand of Sacrifice all the time, and that's a prime real estate key. Instead, I would use Shift F to cast Hand of Sacrifice, right? Shift F. Or, instead of B, being again one of my better keys, I would use Shift B, so it's consistent for Blessing of Protection. So, don't use wireless keyboards while raiding. Don't use wireless mice either, exactly. Alright guys, and yeah, so much more effective. Try keybinding out. If you guys need help, I'm always around in-game. If you need more suggestions, for those of you that had questions, Nimoy, if you have a lot of, if you're struggling a lot with keybinding still, I'm happy to talk about you in-game. Give you some ideas, give you some tips. If you're trying it, it's not working, I will try to work with you guys as well to make it a little bit better. WERD is a movement option to free up a lot of keys, so you use modifiers. That was taught to me with PvP and Mind Alex Basque. I've never really seen the WERD method played before, and I suppose it could be effective, freeing up a lot of keybinds, similar to ESDF. I know that one's a little bit less common, but people still do use ESDF. Alright, and my B tag is always Sparty1780. You can always get me on Twitter or on Facebook. I'm more than happy, when I'm not streaming, I'm usually in-game doing stuff. So just hit me up, ask questions, I'll always be around. I do purge my friends list, which gets quite full, but I give people fair warning that I'll be purging my friends list like the next day over. But again, if you guys have questions, ask me anytime. I'll still be streaming here for you guys, answering questions, telling stories. But that is it for Coach's Corner. Thank you for watching, guys. Back to our Coach's Corners, which are awesome. Next episode, we're going to be going over macros, and macros really ties into keybinds. So I could have one key, my E key, that either hits, a lightning bolt. Here's an example. If with macros, when we cover them next week, I could use my E key for a lightning bolt if I'm targeting an enemy. But if I'm targeting a friendly, I want that exact same key to be a heal. That is absolutely possible when you are using keybinds and macros. Not possible when you are trying to click abilities. Again, it is much slower. So again, through practice, learning, all that fun stuff. Learning to keybind years ago, and I was so stubborn about it, completely changed the game for me. Yeah, absolutely. And you're an ESDF loser? Or, user, sorry. That was a bad slip. You're an ESDF user, not a loser. I apologize. But yeah, and I'm on US and EU, mostly US. Hopefully you're not on EU anymore. Alright guys, so thanks for watching. Have a good night. Be excellent to each other. And as always, live your life heroically.